Hello, welcome back to Kids Online. If you remember, we're looking at the story of Nehemiah, which takes place when God's people have been exiled from their homes for a long time. And we find out about Nehemiah. Now, I know this isn't the Happy Land person that played Nehemiah last week, but he's the only one I could find in my house. Nehemiah is cupbearer to the king, and we left him. He had been praying and praying and praying for a month with an idea forming in his head. So we're going to find out what happens after we worship.
This place is on you now. Every voice singing out to worship you. Every hand lifted up to show our love. Every eye in this place is on you now. Every voice singing out to worship you. Every hand lifted up to show our love. You're the one the song is for. You're the one we all adore. Lifting up your name, we're lifting up your name forever. Every eye is on you. Every eye is on you. You're the love over us and deep within. You're the peace in our hearts as we sing. You're the light turning darkness into day. You're the one the song is for. You're the one we all adore. Lifting up your name, we're lifting up your name forever. Every eye is on you. Every eye is on you. Jesus, you're my joy, you are my freedom. Jesus, you're my joy, you are my freedom. You're the one we all adore. Jesus, Jesus. You're the one the song is for. You're the one we all adore. Lifting up your name, lifting up your name forever. Every eye is on you. Every eye is on you. Jesus, you're my joy, you are my freedom. Jesus, you're my joy, you are my freedom.
So if you remember, Nehemiah wanted to talk to the king about the walls that had been broken in Jerusalem. Let's find out what happened from this film from Jasmine.
When Nehemiah went to serve the king noticed that Nehemiah was sad, and so he asked him what was wrong. Nehemiah quickly prayed to God and told the king about the walls and asked whether he could be allowed to go home and rebuild them. The king said yes, And so Nehemiah bravely asked for more help from the king, so that he could travel to Jerusalem safely and use some of the wood from the king's forest for the rebuilding. The king said yes again and gave Nehemiah all that he had asked for, army officers and wood for the rebuilding. When Nehemiah got to Jerusalem, he very carefully examined the broken down walls. Then he called the people of Jerusalem together and encouraged them to start rebuilding because the God of heaven was with them.
We see here Nehemiah's courage. He was incredibly brave to show his feelings in front of the king. He was incredibly courageous, speaking out about what was happening in his homeland that he was exiled from. The king could have understandably been a little bit fed up hearing about this place that he had taken people away from. And Nehemiah even goes on to ask for help. Now, God amazingly answers his promises in an amazing way. There's an instant response and offer of help and support from the king. But Nehemiah had to have that faith in God, and he had to actually act on what he believed to be the right thing to do. God is with us. God answers our prayers too. And sometimes he wants us to be a part of that answer. God loves to help us grow in our faith by partnering with us, by working with us, by doing things with us, and then seeing how God uses us to help achieve his plans. It really builds our faith and our relationship with him when we do that. So Nehemiah travels to Jerusalem on his faithful, it's not a donkey this time, it's a horse, his faithful horse. And he takes stock of the situation, has a good look, and he encourages the people there in Jerusalem to start the rebuilding project with him, because he assures them the God of heaven will grant us success. But as we're going to find out over the next few weeks, Nehemiah has got a rocky road ahead of him. Who can guess from that incredibly tenuous link what we're going to make? Yes! We're going to make Rocky Road, or chocolate biscuit cake as some people call it. So this is what you're going to need. You're going to need, it says an 18 centimetre squared baking tin. This is a little bit bigger. Greased and lined. You will need 200 grams of digestive biscuits, although I guess any biscuits you can crush will work. 135 grams of butter or margarine, 200 grams of dark chocolate, 2 to 3 tablespoons of golden syrup, and 100 grams of mini marshmallows or normal size marshmallows chopped up. Then you can add up to 100 grams in total of things of your choice. So I've chosen a few raisins, a little bit of popcorn, and a small box of Rice Krispies. Right, you will also need a saucepan to melt most of your ingredients in with a wooden spoon. So you will need an adult and possibly a heat mitt. You will also need a plastic bag that you can crush your biscuits in, and a rolling pin, which I forgot to get. Here it is. Ta-da! Right, I'm going to start by crushing the biscuits. We're going to put the biscuits in the bag. Close it, and then bash the biscuits up into smithereens with the rolling pin. Now, I'm not going to do it on my china plate. I don't want to damage my worktop either, so I'm just going to put it on a chopping board and let the air out first, otherwise it'll split. And I'm afraid I might have to stand up for this. Happy bashing! There. I fear I may have got carried away with my bashing because it's supposed to be sort of small chunks rather than breadcrumb. Yeah, mine looks like sand with a few large lumps on top. Oh well. Right, now we need to heat some of the other ingredients together so they melt. Into your saucepan, you will need to scrape in the butter or margarine, the chocolate, and 2 to 3 tablespoons of golden syrup. I'm off to melt and mix this mixture on the hob, so get an adult to help you do this. You want to melt and mix until all the chocolate has melted. In fact, all your butter's melted. I'll show you when it's melted. Make sure it's on quite a low heat and then gently stir. My chocolate's melting quite quickly, as the butter isn't. I'll show you. Don't fall in. Can you see? So hope my phone doesn't fall in. All done. Get a heat mat, get an adult. You might want to get a heat mitt and take it back to your work table. Now it's melted, you're going to add the other ingredients, but you need to be really careful because this saucepan will be boiling hot. So do use a oven glove if you need to. First of all, we'll put the crushed biscuits in. Now they're all completely coated, you can start adding your other ingredients. Marshmallows, raisins, popcorn, Rice Krispies, and stir them to coat in the chocolate biscuit mixture too. Oh, one got away. I think I'm going to use a spatula now to really get everything mixed in together. Oh, I could lick that in a minute. Okay, so when it's at that sort of consistency, you want to pour it into your tin and spread it round. I haven't put it in very neatly, have I? Just slobbed it in. Oh, I need my wooden spatula back to press it down firmly. There we go. So spread it out in the tin, right up to the edges and into the corners, and so that it's nice and even. And imagine that you are making a rocky road. Perhaps think of Nehemiah riding his horse all the way back to Jerusalem, and think about how he and his team had to rebuild the walls. They would have used some sort of, not cement, but some sort of a cement type thing, wouldn't they? Right. I wonder what they did use, actually. That's a good question. Somebody needs to Google that. What did they use to build walls with in ancient times? Oh no, I hope my hair hasn't gone in. Right, okay. You're now going to put your tin in the fridge for about 2 hours so that the mixture cools and hardens. This tin is now really quite hot, so you might want to use an oven glove to carry it. And then you might need to check that it's cool enough to do some cleaning up. Yummy. I'm looking forward to tasting that rocky road later. Now there's one detail in this story that I absolutely love, and I don't know whether you picked it up as we were watching the film earlier. It's in chapter 2, verse 4. So it's where Nehemiah has just told the king why he looks sad. And I'll read from verse 4. The king said to me, "What is it you want?" Then I prayed to the God of heaven and I answered the king. And that's the little verse I love. He gets asked a difficult question, and in the same sentence, he prays to the God of heaven and answers the king. So he obviously didn't sit down and pray while the king was waiting for his answer. He obviously just fired off a quick prayer in his head, probably with his eyes open. That moment between somebody asking you a question or telling you something and you drawing breath to answer, you've managed to fling off a prayer to God. Do you ever do that? I do, quite a lot, sometimes without realising. Sometimes it's just like, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh Lord, or help, or what do I say? Or what do I do now? Or help me. Sorry about the squeaky voice. Obviously, it's all in my head, so I don't go around squeaking at people. I wonder if you have ever prayed quickly in your head, or your heart's just sort of called out to God. I got told that they were called arrow prayers, like I haven't got a bow and arrow, sadly, when you kind of pull the arrow back and you ping an arrow prayer up to God. But we could also call them slingshot prayers. Do you remember when David fought Goliath and he didn't use the king's armour, he used his trusty stones and sling, and he fired them at Goliath, fired them at the problem, knowing God was with him. Now obviously we are not going to go around today firing things at people, but we can fire prayers at difficult situations. So we're going to finish with the slingshot song to help remind you that you might feel weak and you might have a difficult problem ahead of you, but you can slingshot your prayer straight up to God and he will answer. Just before we finish, I think it's time to have a look at the rocky road. It's been in the fridge about 1.5 hours. It's still just about soft enough to cut. So I'm going to carefully chop it into, about 16 squares. Well, they're not very even. Do get an adult to cut it for you, especially if you're going to use a sharp knife. Okay, now I need to try and angle one piece out. Let's go from the middle. Oh yes, look at that. There. Wow. This is a little bit like the story of the little red hen, where when you finish making something, suddenly everybody appears to help you eat it. I'm sure that's going to happen in a minute. Right, I'm going to try a little tiny bit now. It's very sweet and crunchy. I think the popcorn really works. I like that. See you next week. Bye bye.
could fight it all, but little David won. When I'm scared, just like David, you give me strength, you give me courage to face the day. You're the power in me, strength when I am weak, when I feel little like little David. You're the power in me, when I feel little like little David. You're the power in my slingshot, when all I've got is a slingshot. You're the power in my slingshot, when all I've got is a slingshot. You're the power in me. Standing small before a giant so big and tall, who'd have thought he could fight at all? But little David won. So when I'm scared, just like David, you give me strength, you give me courage to face the day. You're the power in me, your strength when I am weak, when I feel little like little David. You're the power in me, when I feel little like little David. You're the power in my slingshot, when all I've got is a slingshot. You're the power in my slingshot, when all I've got is a slingshot. Slingshot, when all I've got is a slingshot. You're the power in my slingshot, when all I've got is a slingshot. You're the power in me. You're the power in me.
Down Goliath, get down to the floor. You think you're so great, but you're not anymore. Down giant, the power you've got is getting on the floor by a little slingshot. Our God is so great, the King